Okay, well, the next caller that I've got lined up has actually had the pleasure of debating William Lane Craig. I'm going to bring him in a moment. Before I do, one of the exciting things that has happened in Aaron's life since he was last on the show is that he presided over the wedding of Matt Dillahunty. I have to say that when I saw Matt and his to-be wife, Beth, walking up the aisle, I was somewhat disturbed to see them walking towards something which I can best describe as the High Plains drifter with sunglasses on. But tell us about the wedding as I bring the next caller in, Aaron.
I'm very embarrassed about that. I was actually surprisingly nervous at that. I've delivered speeches to audiences that I knew were largely hostile to the message that I'm bringing. I have actually gone into church knowing that I'm going to take on the whole congregation in some public display, and yet I was not nervous by either of those things. I was nervous by conducting a wedding. And one of the things that I'm embarrassed about was that as the audio was set up by Matt using his the same audio equipment that he would use for the Nonprofits radio show. It didn't even occur to me to check whether all of that was operating. I thought it had been. My own camera, I forgot to turn it on until I saw the couple coming up the aisle and realized that I hadn't positioned the camera. You had professional photographers everywhere, but I hadn't assigned it to anybody to actually do the video on it. All I was worried about was, delivering the lines for the family and for the attended guests and making sure that everything went off that way. And I completely forgot about the internet audience, and my apologies to everybody for the sound being so abysmally bad. But at least
I had a brief exchange of messages with Matt a week or so afterwards, and he said in relation to you failing to take your sunglasses off, he was laughing quite a lot about it. Welcome to the show, Michael Payton. As I say, Michael has had the pleasure of a television discussion with William Lane Craig, and I presume that that's a topic that you've come on to talk about. But welcome to the show, Michael.
It's good to be here. Well, there's so many things I'd like to say in regards to morality from your last caller, but I think I did want to go back to Craig briefly. If we had time for morality, maybe we could talk about that some other time. But
if we have time for morality, I like that thought.
Well, the discussion of morality. Basically what I would like to put out there is, having debated him myself and also been in discussions or kind of close to other people who have debated him, so talking to Lawrence Krauss or Christopher DiCarlo or Shelley Kagan, and having those discussions openly, one of the things that really comes out, there's one part of this where you wouldn't want to debate Craig just on the genocide thing. And he said much more horrific things than that. Things like that advocating a homosexual lifestyle is morally equivalent to mainlining heroin. It gets really bad when you start to go into his work. But more importantly, there are discussions like that happen, but more normally in a philosophical context. There are certain tactics and there's certain expectations that happen for professional philosophers. And he doesn't follow any of those. In the academic literature, when he does get replies to them, it's shown that a lot of his arguments are done in such a plain language, lawyerish sort of way that they don't really give out anything that catches their attention. So they've actually been thoroughly dismissed by people who know better, and he doesn't reply to them. Secondly, when he does get debates with people who are academically inclined, I'm thinking here particularly Shelley Kagan or Victor Stanger or Lawrence Krauss, he invariably loses on a number of fronts, and then will go onto his podcast or go onto his website and then trash the person, in a way that's completely unbecoming of someone who considers themselves a professional or an academic or anything like that. So I think no matter what happens, Craig continues to look worse and worse to, I think, the audience that ought to matter most to him, which is professional academics. Whereas he seems to be mainly and only interested in scoring cheap shots against people who are far better qualified than him.
I would disagree that Craig's goal is academics. To me, he looks like as a professional flim-flam man who just wears the the robes of academia to give himself credibility.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. Like that, it's completely a smokescreen. His real academic work is, again, not very well received.
I was just about to ask you about that, Michael, if I may. What academic writings or works has he done, and on what topics, and with what response?
Well, there is an academic study of theology which he has contributed to. Whether or not we all agree here, I certainly don't, that theology is a legitimate form of study. That is one thing. But he's also done things on philosophy of time, which I'm not very familiar with. He has put out his divine command theory of morality, and is some work on metaphysics around events and actions. So some of these are...
Can someone just briefly explain to me what the philosophy of time is?
Sorry? I didn't quite hear that.
What the hell is the philosophy of time?
Well, the philosophy of time would be the issues around how we perceive and understand time. Some of them would be how do we interpret time in relation to relativity theory or quantum physics. So most of the people who do that work, by the way, would simultaneously have... Well, the people, what I was about to say is, the people who do that work, like Stephen Yan at MIT, has a PhD in physics and has worked in many labs, but takes a very different sort of interpretation of what those experiments do. Again, this isn't the area that I'm most familiar with. I just don't find it that interesting. But apparently there is a philosophy of time, and most of the people who do it, besides Craig, are physicists and not theologians.
Mike, tell me more about his conduct, because I'm not used to these types of philosophical debates. What kind of breaches do you see in his conduct?
Well, a lot of them are like, there's ones, first of all, in the debate, and then there's after the debate or leading up to it. In the debate, he's very well known for basically using a lot of what are typically called just debate tactics. So like burning the turf, burden shifting comes up a lot, equivocation of terms. Those types of things don't fly very well for people whose sole focus in life, in their academic pursuits, is to just analyze arguments. They're usually not too impressed by that stuff. But after the debates, things like Christopher DiCarlo and I talked at Center for Inquiry Canada a while ago, and what had happened to him is he did the debate, like shook hands with him, great, nice meeting you, it was a good time, and then within a week he had gotten emails from some of his students. DiCarlo got emails from some of his students saying, have you seen William Lane Craig's website? And he goes to the website and sees that he had written up a sort of post-debate write-up. And it was basically trashing his academic background, his conduct during the debate, the moderator, the audience for not understanding how debate is supposed to work. Like, it gets pretty nasty, actually. This happened, a similar thing happened with his debate with Sam Harris, where the audience ended up being against him. And then he goes on to his podcast and starts saying, well, this is only because people are too stupid and ignorant to know how to properly moderate or judge a debate. And that's, again, that's something that I don't think Richard Dawkins or anyone really needs to be a part of.
I mean, ultimately, that's his responsibility. I mean, if he isn't, the great debater that he thinks he is, then it falls on him to actually present a better argument. Now, as it turns out, I don't think he does have better arguments to present. But I would agree that those two alone, the first is in academic terms, anything that's essentially dishonestly trying to score cheap points, that burns bridges and favour with your academic colleagues very quickly.
Yeah, I just went through something similar this week. A few days ago, I was interviewed on a show for a creationist radio show host called Bob Eningart. And what Bob did was he was basically attacking the first foundational falsehood of creationism. He wasn't attacking the whole video series. He just watched the first one, and that was pretty much it. He said he'd seen up to 5, so he hadn't seen anything where the substance was coming in that he would, that would be worthwhile in his argument anyway. But he's arguing against the first foundational falsehood of creationism, and he expressed twice in that where he was committing that same fallacy, where he was, for example, I asked him at one point, what evidence did he have to imply that there was a God? Because I told him that I'd asked all these people for decades to produce any evidence at all that was verifiably accurate, that was evidence for any of his beliefs, and specifically in the case of this question, what did he have that specifically supported creationism over biological evolution? And his answer was the first and second law of thermodynamics. Not kidding, that was really his answer. And of course, this is assuming that there's no option but that, and he said this at one point, that if you believe the biological evolution, you have to believe in the Big Bang. They are interrelated. No, they're not, I argued, but he continued on. He ignored that and continued on, that I had to assume that there was no God. And he kept arguing that all these creationists that had lived before Darwin's time, like Newton, for example, they are all classified as creationists, and to a large degree because he said they would reject naturalistic explanations in favor of a belief in a God, which again is the first foundational falsehood of creationism, which is you either assume natural explanations have value or you believe in a God, but you do not believe both. You don't believe that God is responsible for the orchestration of natural systems. That's the foundational falsehood. He expressed that himself 4 times in that discussion, and I even called him on it twice. I interrupted his argument to point out that that is exactly what he was doing, and he ignored that and continued on to his argument till he gets to the end when he finally says, aha, the first foundational falsehood of creationism is itself false because I cannot quote one creationist anywhere who actually holds to that dichotomy. I said, yes, I can. I can quote you 4 times in this one conversation. And he still posted that, so far as I know, in its entirety on the web. You can go and listen to it, and he explains how he holds to that dichotomy, yet he's arguing that I'm the one holding to the fallacy because he doesn't believe what he said he believes.
And the second thing that Craig does, as you were saying, is he retroactively sort of declares victory.
Exactly.
The arguments stand on their merits.
Well, hold on.
You have to go back and, how shall we say, revisit the debate. That doesn't exactly speak well of your performance in the debate.
Mike, did you follow John Hott's debate with Hout? I don't know how you say it properly. With Jerry Coyne. I believe it was in Kentucky or West Virginia, and it was about accommodation between science and religion. Did you have a chance to see that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, the controversy around it surrounded whether or not to release the video. John Hout, however you pronounce it, is one of the well-known theologians, I guess, and he presented, I think, a very scholarly type of presentation. And Jerry Coyne came in and gave what I would call a very scientific type of presentation, which pulls no punches, uses no tactics, and presents essentially data and a very formalized type of argument that can be reduced to bullet points, bullet point 1, bullet point 2. What I see in this debate is not so much even a difference in accommodating positions as much as a difference in technique. Scientists are very, very poor at framing their arguments into compelling, emotionally loaded terminology. Like you're saying, burning the ground, burning the turf.
Yeah, burning the turf. Basically dumping a whole bunch of constructive material in such a way that there's not adequate time to respond given the time structure of the debate, which, by the way, William Lane Craig always insists on having uniformly in all of his debates.
And this is where scientists coming into these debates are so unprepared. Even someone like Shermer, who does this a lot more than most and straddles that line between science and philosophy and cognitive science, it seems like such a mismatch in the people that are prepared to take an argument to the audience that resonates to the people who are used to presenting the evidence, standing back and letting the evidence do the talking for them. Is that something you've seen?
There's been a couple of people who were, Shelley Kagan is definitely at the top of my list, where the debate was, first of all, focused on being purely about objective morality. And Kagan is an incredibly brilliant ethicist. He's at Yale. And I've spoken to him a few times, and he's just one of these people that just makes your head spin with the amount of just knowledge that they have. But unless you're some kind of really talented educator and you know your like the entire history of Western philosophy and can sum it up in seconds, then most of the time you're not going to win those types of debates. Now, Kagan won because he's a genius and he's an excellent communicator. But there does seem to be a difference in approach. Like academics spend their time with their projects, with writing books, with the literature, and contributing to that sort of culture of discourse. Craig doesn't do that. His entire focus is purely on debating and winning these debates and making a public spectacle. And so he's very good at it.
So you're saying he's a master debater?
And a cunning linguist, actually.
And also, I think you went a little bit further than that, Michael, in a video that you made on YouTube talking about your television appearance with him. I think you made the observation that, yes, he really is that smug in real life. I mean, he's one of the few people that I have an overwhelming desire to give a right good slap to. That smug smile he's got and condescending air just really irritates me. Michael, did you want to raise any issue about morality? Because I've got 4 callers lined up.
There's so much we could talk about, but...
What's your best shot? Which is the one you'd like to talk about most?
Okay, well, there's an underlying assumption that happened with your last caller, and usually happens in the debate around morality and God, which is basically that morality comes from God, and that we have certain types of prohibitions that we'd want to have, and we need to have them justified or structured. This is a bit of a technical point, but this really assumes to a large extent that morality is somehow law-like, that there are specific prohibitions that are very well focused, well defined, and don't apply outside of any other circumstances. And I'd say to your last caller, to anyone listening who's looking at these types of debates, is that one of the biggest issues in ethical philosophy for the last 100 years at least has been whether or not that assumption that morality is like a law or is like a set of rules even applies. You have other structures that are more based on achieving a good character and being a good person, or other structures that are more focused towards providing a good ends. Like Aaron, actually, your sort of justification for why incest, even in the cases where it doesn't create harm, falls very closely to the type of reasoning that philosophers use for building up character, that you'd want to have someone who's following a certain standard or model of what we think a person is or how we think they ought to act. So I'd say that is actually a big topic that I think needs to be investigated further, and anyone going into these debates, these God debates where morality comes up, I think that's an excellent point of contention. It's a great place to start, which is, well, what is ethics? What are what are we even talking about? Like, the assumption on the part of the theist is always to assume that it's a set of rules, like the Ten Commandments, and so it automatically plays into their hands. But if morality...
But the point is this, isn't it, Michael? That is the way in which they are using their definition of morals, and I'm trying to sort of like play devil's advocate and support the last caller. He seemed to be suggesting, this is a topic that has arisen in his conversations with theists. Theists do approach morality as effectively a set of laws.
Yeah, so you tell them that they're wrong and explain why a set of rules doesn't even capture the type of ethical thinking that we normally have.
Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were being somewhat critical of the caller as opposed to those he was talking to.
Oh, no. I think he raises a valid question, and one that a lot of people ask a lot of the time and usually get really stuck with. But he seemed to also be asking, like, as an atheist, I don't know how to respond to this stuff. But for the last, I'd say, 400 years, most of ethical theory has come in as being purely secular, and has made more advancements, more discussions, more interesting and precise types of ethical theories than we've seen in the entire rest of the world.
Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't see this one as that much of... I don't struggle with this that much in that, on a very simple level, we're all spewed from the same genome, and therefore it seems fairly reasonable to assume that there are certain social behaviors that are going to be hardwired and others that are acquired. And I think the reason that people get in such a tizzy about morality is it straddles these two factors.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of psychological evidence to support exactly that. And really the way I got into ethics and philosophy generally was through cognitive neuroscience, where we were doing ethical psychology. So there is plenty of things to talk about just there. There do seem to be things that are hardwired. There are also certain ways in which human beings reason about morality, which are all very fascinating, interesting, scientific and philosophical discussions.
Michael, I'm sure they are, and I'd love to have you on for the rest of the show to discuss them, but I've got 4 callers waiting.
Absolutely.
Do feel free, please, to come back on a future show, but for now I'm going to move on, if that's okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Very much for the call.
Thank you.
Take care.